The year is 1961. The world watches, holding its breath, as the tension between superpowers reaches a boiling point. A small nation in the Caribbean becomes the stage for a pivotal moment in the Cold War, a moment that will be etched in history. Cuba, just 90 miles off the coast of Florida, has become a flashpoint, a tinderbox ready to ignite. Fidel Castro's revolution has overthrown the Batista regime, a move that sends shockwaves through the halls of power in Washington, D.C., the United States, deeply entrenched in its ideological battle against the spread of communism, views Castro's Cuba with suspicion and fear. The fear of a communist stronghold so close to American shores is palpable. The Bay of Pigs invasion, a clandestine military operation, is about to unfold. This operation, shrouded in secrecy, is a bold attempt to change the course of history. It is a story of ambition and miscalculation, of bravery and betrayal. The stakes are high and the consequences potentially catastrophic. It is a story that reveals the complexities of international politics and the human cost of ideological conflict. The decisions made in the corridors of power will ripple across the globe. Imagine, if you will, the tropical beaches of Cuba, the turquoise waters shimmering under a Caribbean sun. A paradise on the surface, but beneath a storm is brewing. But this idyllic scene belies the tension brewing. The Cuban government, aware of the looming threat, prepares for an imminent confrontation. On these shores, a group of Cuban exiles, trained and armed by the CIA, prepare for a daring mission. These men, driven by a desire to reclaim their homeland, are ready to risk everything. Their goal: to overthrow Castro and establish a new government, one aligned with the United States. They believe that their mission will spark a revolution, a wave of change that will sweep across the island. The stage is set for a confrontation that will have far-reaching consequences, not only for Cuba and the United States, but for the entire world. The eyes of the world are on this small island, waiting to see what will unfold. This is the story of the Bay of Pigs invasion, a story of hope and despair, of courage and failure. A story that will be remembered for generations to come. President John F. Kennedy, newly inaugurated, faces one of the first major crises of his administration. His decisions will shape the future of U.S. foreign policy. The CIA, confident in their plan, believes that the invasion will be swift and decisive. But the reality on the ground is far more complex. Castro, aware of the impending invasion, has fortified his defenses. The Cuban military is prepared to defend their revolution at all costs. As the invasion begins, the world watches in anticipation. The outcome of this battle will have profound implications for the Cold War and the balance of power. The invasion, however, does not go as planned. The exiles are quickly overwhelmed and the mission ends in failure. The repercussions are immediate and far-reaching. The failed invasion strains U.S.-Cuban relations and heightens Cold War tensions. The world is left to grapple with the consequences of this bold but ill-fated operation. In the aftermath, President Kennedy takes responsibility for the failure, a moment that will define his presidency. The Bay of Pigs invasion becomes a cautionary tale in the annals of history. And so the tropical beaches of Cuba return to their serene state, but the echoes of the past remain. The story of the Bay of Pigs invasion is a reminder of the complexities and perils of international politics. This is the story of the Bay of Pigs invasion, a chapter in history that continues to resonate, a testament to the enduring struggle for power and the human cost of ideological conflict. To understand the Bay of Pigs invasion, we must first journey back to the heart of the Cold War. This period, marked by intense rivalry and ideological conflict, saw the world divided into two camps: the capitalist West, led by the United States, and the communist East, spearheaded by the Soviet Union. The stakes were high and the tension palpable as both superpowers sought to expand their influence across the globe. This global standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union, two superpowers vying for dominance, casts a long shadow over the events unfolding in Cuba. The Cold War was not just a battle of military might, but also a war of ideologies, with each side determined to prove the superiority of its system. Diplomatic meetings were often fraught with tension as leaders from both sides navigated a complex web of alliances and rivalries. The world is a chessboard, and Cuba has become a crucial pawn. Situated just 90 miles off the coast of Florida, Cuba's strategic location made it a focal point in the Cold War. The island nation, with its proximity to the United States, was seen as a potential launch pad for Soviet influence in the Western Hemisphere. As the geopolitical map shifted, Cuba's importance grew and the stakes became even higher. Fidel Castro's rise to power in 1959 sends shockwaves through Washington. The Cuban Revolution, which saw the overthrow of the US-backed dictator Fulgencio Batista, was a turning point in the region. Castro, with his charismatic leadership and revolutionary zeal, quickly garnered support from the Cuban populace. However, his socialist policies and anti-American rhetoric alarmed US officials, who saw the revolution as a direct challenge to their influence in the region. His socialist policies and close ties to the Soviet Union are seen as a direct threat to American interests. Castro's alignment with the Soviet Union was not just ideological but also strategic. The Soviet Union, eager to expand its influence in the Western Hemisphere, provided economic and military support to Cuba. This alliance deepened the rift between Cuba and the United States, setting the stage for a confrontation. The United States, fearful of a communist foothold in the Western Hemisphere, vows to remove Castro from power. The US government, under President Dwight D. Eisenhower, began to explore various options to undermine Castro's regime. Covert operations, economic sanctions, and propaganda campaigns were all part of the strategy to destabilize the Cuban government. The goal was clear: to prevent the spread of communism in the Americas. The Cold War was a time of paranoia and suspicion. The fear of communist infiltration and the threat of nuclear war loomed large in the minds of Americans. Civil defense drills, espionage activities, and anti-communist propaganda became commonplace. The atmosphere of distrust and fear permeated every aspect of life, influencing government policies and public opinion. The threat of nuclear war loomed large, and every action, every alliance, was seen through the lens of this ideological struggle. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, which brought the world to the brink of nuclear war, was a stark reminder of the high stakes involved. The presence of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba was perceived as an existential threat by the United States, further escalating tensions. The United States, under President John F. Kennedy, feels an immense pressure to act, to demonstrate its resolve against the spread of communism. Kennedy, who had inherited the Cold War legacy from his predecessors, was determined to take a firm stand against the Soviet Union. His administration believed that a strong response was necessary to maintain US credibility and deter further communist expansion. The stage is set for a confrontation. The US government, convinced that a direct intervention was necessary, began to plan a covert operation to overthrow Castro. The Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, took the lead in organizing and training a group of Cuban exiles for an invasion. The plan, known as Operation Zapata, aimed to incite a popular uprising against Castro's regime. The United States, driven by Cold War anxieties and a desire to maintain its regional hegemony, sets its sights on Cuba. The Bay of Pigs invasion, a plan hatched in secrecy, is about to be unleashed. The operation, which involved a complex web of military and intelligence activities, was seen as a critical test of US resolve. The outcome of this invasion would have far-reaching implications for the Cold War dynamics and the future of US-Cuban relations. The Bay of Pigs invasion, a plan hatched in secrecy, is about to be unleashed. The operation, which involved a complex web of military and intelligence activities, was seen as a critical test of US resolve. The outcome of this invasion would have far-reaching implications for the Cold War dynamics and the future of US-Cuban relations. In the shadows of the Cold War, a clandestine plan takes shape. The Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, tasked with covert operations, is given a directive overthrow Fidel Castro. A group of Cuban exiles, bitter opponents of Castro's regime who fled to the United States, become their instruments. These exiles, longing to return to their homeland and restore it to what they see as its former glory, are eager recruits. They believe in the promise of American support, a promise that will prove to be disastrously misleading. Operation Zapata, as the plan is known, is audacious in its conception. It involves training and arming a force of Cuban exiles, who will then launch an amphibious invasion at the Bay of Pigs. The hope is that this invasion will spark a popular uprising against Castro, leading to his swift downfall. The CIA, operating on the assumption that Castro's grip on power is tenuous, believes that a small, well-trained force can trigger a domino effect, toppling the regime. However, this assumption, fatally flawed, will have catastrophic consequences. April 17, 1961, a date that would be etched into the annals of history as a day of miscalculation and shattered dreams. The Bay of Pigs, a secluded inlet on the southern coast of Cuba, becomes the focal point of the world's attention. This isolated stretch of coastline, surrounded by dense mangroves and treacherous swamps, is about to witness a dramatic and ill-fated attempt to overthrow Fidel Castro's regime. In the pre-dawn darkness, a small fleet of ships carrying over 1,400 Cuban exiles approaches the shore. These men, trained and equipped by the CIA, are filled with a mix of hope and trepidation, believing they are on the cusp of reclaiming their homeland from communist rule. This is the moment of truth for Operation Zapata. Months of planning, training, and covert operations have led to this critical juncture. The exiles, many of whom have left behind families and livelihoods, are determined to succeed. The invasion from the outset is plagued by problems. The landing is chaotic, with troops disoriented and scattered. Communication breakdowns and navigational errors add to the confusion, undermining the operation's effectiveness. The landing site is poorly chosen, a swampy area with difficult terrain. The exiles find themselves bogged down in the mud, struggling to advance and establish a foothold on the beach. The element of surprise, crucial for any covert operation, is lost when Castro's forces, alerted to the impending attack, are waiting. The Cuban military, well prepared and strategically positioned, is ready to repel the invaders. As the exiles wade ashore, they are met with fierce resistance. Bullets whiz past them and explosions erupt around them, creating a scene of chaos and carnage. The dream of a swift and decisive victory quickly fades. Cuban troops, backed by Soviet tanks and aircraft, unleash a barrage of fire. The exiles, armed with limited resources and outdated equipment, are no match for the well-equipped Cuban forces. The invaders, outnumbered and outgunned, are pinned down on the beach. They take cover wherever they can, but the relentless assault from Castro's forces leaves them with little hope of advancing. The promised American air support, crucial to the plan's success, fails to materialize. The exiles look to the skies, expecting to see the might of the US Air Force coming to their aid, but the skies remain ominously empty. President Kennedy, fearing direct US involvement and a wider conflict with the Soviet Union, makes the fateful decision to withhold air cover at the last moment. This decision, driven by the desire to avoid an international crisis, seals the fate of the invasion. The exiles are left stranded, their hopes of liberation dashed against the rocks of betrayal. Captured and defeated, they face an uncertain future, their dreams of a free Cuba slipping further out of reach. The Bay of Pigs invasion stands as a stark reminder of the complexities and perils of international politics. A landing ground for defeat and a legacy of betrayal that would haunt the United States for years to come.